Hello, friends. My name is Jan Frank, and thank you for tuning in to my new YouTube video channel. Some of you that saw my last posting know that this was right before Mother's Day, and I talked about how, for some of us, Mother's Day can be complicated, and for others, it may not be so, but I shared a little bit about how I felt, even though my mother has been deceased for several years, just some of the feelings and issues that it brought up. And so today we're going to continue kind of along that line, but this time we're going to talk about our fathers. Since Father's Day is coming up in June, I wanted to really tag on to what we talked about with mothers. But I want you to know that it's very normal for our feelings regarding our mother to be different than that of our father, not only because of our gender differences, but also our experience, and also what mothers tend to be in our lives versus our fathers. So, it was true, and I shared a little bit on my blog about my own story, and particularly with regard to the father in my life. You see, my parents divorced when I was 5 years old, and so that caused my mom to be a single parent, and really from 5 years old onward, I really had very little relationship with my biological father. My mother remarried when I was 8 years old, and that introduced into my life my stepfather, and he really took on the role of being my father at that stage in life. But both of those relationships were complicated. First, I felt really abandoned by my biological father, not knowing, of course, as a young child what all the situation or circumstances were surrounding my parents' split, but I just felt abandoned. And secondly, although there were some good that my stepfather brought into our family, one of which was we began attending church on a regular basis, and that caused some dramatic changes in my own life. But even after my stepfather came into our lives and we began attending church, my stepfather abused me. So I grew up with an abandoning father and a father who abused. And that certainly complicated my view of father in my own life. And in fact, I didn't realize the impact of both of those things in my life really until adulthood. I carried a lot of the feelings, misconceptions, as well as the betrayal and the deep hurt in my life for many, many years before I realized that those things needed to be addressed. But I'm going to share a little bit of how we're affected when we have a loss with regard to our father image. And sometimes in the counseling world, we call it a father wound or a mother wound. And those things do not automatically get remedied with time. And so really in my adulthood, because I came to faith in Jesus when I was quite young, it was really the first time in my life that I began to hear about a God who loved me, that knew me, who loved me completely, and really who had chosen me as his daughter. And that concept was very hard for me to grasp. Even though I knew it in my head, there was a difference between what my head knew and what my heart felt. And so several years later, into my adulthood, I came across a book that was very helpful to me. And it was written, I'll show it to you. It's called Mistaken Identity from Christy and William Gaultier. And the subtitle is Clear Up Your Image of God and Enjoy His Love. And through this book, I learned about how many times we project onto God some of our earthly father's image. And in fact, in the book, they have a little test that you can take to reveal what aspects of God's character that you really have difficulty with. And so I took the book knowing that I had some issues, but not really able to identify them. And so I'll just share with you the two areas that seem to be prominent in my own life. The first was the aspect of God's acceptance and his considerate heart toward his children, because I did not really experience that as a kid. And so it felt as though God was hard on me, that I needed to improve, that there was always more that I needed to do in order to be loved by him. And also that he didn't really care about the things that I cared about, that he didn't take some of those things into consideration. So I realized in my own adult life that there were a lot of distortions there. The second area was that of protection, and you can maybe understand why because of the little bit that I shared about my background. But it felt as though I couldn't count on God to protect me from harm or to protect me in advance of something bad that was going to happen. In fact, I felt as though God left me alone to fend for myself. And it wasn't until later on in life that I realized that both of those characteristics of God had a lot to do with what had happened in my life. You see, particularly with that characteristic of God, I really wanted God to be a preventer rather than just a protector. And there's more that I want to share with you about that later. But just know that as you approach this Father's Day, you may have some feelings that will be helpful for you to explore so that they don't catch you by surprise or that you get blindsided on Father's Day. Be willing to sit down and think about some experiences that you had and with your father, good or bad, and the feelings that are associated with those experiences. You may be a person that had a wonderful relationship with your dad, and so I'm so glad that that's true, and celebrate that. But if you're like me, you had difficulty in your relationship with your father, then know that there may be feelings of distrust and ambiguity and confusion. And if those things are true, it may even spill over into your relationship or lack of relationship with God as you may perceive him. So I hope this has been helpful, and I hope it will get you ready to, in some way, be better equipped to deal with Father's Day this year. So thanks for tuning in. See you next time.